Back in the late 1980s and throughout the 1990s, there weren't many men walking the streets of Queens who didn't move with fear and respect when the name Kenneth Supreme McGriff came up. Supreme wasn't just another street figure. He was the leader of the Supreme team, one of the most feared crews New York had ever seen. His name carried weight. His reputation traveled faster than he did, and most people knew better than to even look at him or his crew the wrong way. But in a city full of small-time hustlers, corner boys, and dudes who stayed in their lane, there was one man who wasn't afraid. A man who didn't bow. A man who didn't care about reputations. A man who was willing to stand up to Supreme and live or die with the consequences. His name was Troy Singleton. The streets knew him as Big Nose Troy. By the time Troy came up, Queens was already packed with heavy hitters. You had Supreme McGriff, Prince, Fat Cat Nichols, and even a young Jay-Z moving through the same circles. Later on, names like 50 Cent would emerge from that same soil. But Troy was different. He represented a new wave of street dudes, a generation that didn't care about the old guard, a generation that didn't automatically respect a name just because it was feared. Big Nose Troy didn't give 2 cents about who you were or what crew you ran with, and that mindset made him dangerous. Troy Singleton was born in Queens in the late 1960s, though exact dates vary depending on the source. What is clear is that he grew up in Southside Jamaica, Queens, an area where survival often came before dreams. From a young age, Troy developed a reputation as someone you didn't want problems with. He was bold, he was fearless, and he was willing to go places most people wouldn't, despite suffering from sickle cell anemia, a painful and serious illness. Troy never let it slow him down. In fact, that shared condition became the foundation of one of his closest friendships. Troy was extremely close with Prodigy from Mobb Deep, who also suffered from this sickle cell anemia. Their bond wasn't just street level, it was personal. When Prodigy was hospitalized, Troy would visit him often. He'd bring him food, sit with him, talk with him. That wasn't just loyalty, that was brotherhood. That relationship alone tells you something about Troy's character. He wasn't just a street figure, he was someone people trusted deeply. The closest person to Troy was Eric Smith, better known as E-Money Bags. These two were inseparable. They ran together, moved together, and handled business together. From robberies to stick-ups across Queens and surrounding areas, Big Nose Troy and E-Money Bags built reputations as dudes who were active, fearless, and unpredictable. Eventually, they became two of the biggest enemies the Supreme team would ever face. E-Money Bags' hatred for Supreme had a clear origin. Supreme was selling tagged cars through a woman named Z. E-Money Bags decided to buy one and put down $1,000 as a deposit. Later, he changed his mind and asked for his money back. Supreme refused. Not only did he refuse, but he also treated E-Money Bags like he was a lame and a little dude. That single moment ignited a feud that would end in bloodshed. Big Nose Troy's personal beef with the Supreme team started in July 1995 during a basketball event known as the Peace Tournament, held at Baisley Park Projects, Supreme's home turf. Hundreds of people were there, families, kids, community members. Then chaos erupted. Shots rang out on the court. 2 spectators, Pierre Mitchell and Jamal Adams, were killed. Several others were wounded. The shooting was drug-related, but witnesses were scared. People didn't want to talk. Eventually, Troy was identified in a lineup and charged with second-degree murder. Here's the key part. A Supreme team member allegedly gave a statement against him. Word on the street was that Bimmy was also preparing to testify. Even though Big Nose Troy ultimately walked free, he never forgot that betrayal. From that moment on, Troy saw Supreme's crew as enemies for life. After the Peace Tournament incident and after E-Money Bags got cheated, Big Nose Troy and E made a decision that few people would dare to make. They declared war on the Supreme team. Not symbolic war, not rap beef, real street war. Anyone connected to Supreme became a target. They pistol whipped people, smacked up associates, ran down on dudes in broad daylight. Big Nose Troy was so bold that he would stalk Supreme's people outside Universal offices and slap them in the middle of Broadway, one of the busiest streets in New York City. That level of disrespect couldn't go unanswered. Big Nose Troy didn't stop at the streets. He went after Supreme's business affiliates, Murder Inc. Records. He assaulted Ron Gutter Robinson, J. Rule's manager. He and Nathan Greeny Bourne hunted down Irv Gotti and beat him up. That was crossing a major line. By 2001, Supreme had seen enough. According to court documents and testimony, Supreme enlisted Emmanuel Dog Mosley to put together a hit squad. The price? $50,000. The targets? E-Moneybags and Big Nose Troy. In Supreme's mind, E-Moneybags had to die for the Black Just incident, and Troy had to die for the peace tournament and the chaos that followed. In July 2001, E-Moneybags was killed first. He was killed in his car. 3 months later, on October 28, 2001, Big Nose Troy's time came. Outside Club Van Wyck on Liberty Avenue in Southside Jamaica, Queens. Hitmen caught up with him as he walked back to his car. He was shot 8 times. Execution style, Big Nose Troy never had a chance. The murders of Big Nose Troy and E-Moneybags played a major role in Supreme McGriff's downfall. In 2007, Supreme was sentenced to life in prison, where he remains today. Most of his co-defendants cooperated. The judge rejected claims of self-defense. The streets moved on, but they never forgot. Today, Big Nose Troy is remembered as a Queens street legend. His legacy lives on through his son, Troy Singh, and through music. 50 Cent shouted him out on Ghetto Quran, reminding the world how quickly street legends disappear. One path leads to prison, one leads to death, one leads to music and success. Same streets, different endings. And Big Nose Troy's name will forever be etched into Queen Street history. A man who stood tall, refused to bow, and paid the ultimate price. When you really sit with the story of Big Nose Troy, it stops being just another street legend and starts feeling like a warning sign. Not just for guys in the streets, but for men everywhere who are walking around with anger, pride, and something to prove. Troy wasn't weak. He wasn't scared. He wasn't lacking heart. If anything, he had too much of it. He stood on respect. He didn't tolerate disrespect. He believed in handling problems head on, immediately and publicly. In the environment he came from, that kind of mindset was praised. It made you solid. It made your name ring bells. But here's the truth. A lot of men never hear early enough. Fearlessness without foresight is a liability. Troy's courage made him powerful in the short term, but it also locked him into a life where every problem had to be answered with force. And once you choose that path, there's no such thing as peace, only escalation. And escalation always ends the same way. A lot of men watching this right now aren't in the streets. You're not dodging beefs or crews, but the mindset is the same. You feel disrespected at work. You feel overlooked in life. You feel like people don't see your value. So you react, you argue, you burn bridges, you move emotionally instead of strategically. You let pride decide your next move. And just like in the streets, that mindset creates enemies where none were needed and shuts doors you'll wish were still open later. The streets are just a louder, more violent version of real life. The same rules apply everywhere. Big Nose Troy was strong. But strength alone is not enough. Strength without direction becomes destruction. Think about it. Troy had loyalty. He had courage. He had presence. He had respect. Those same traits, placed in a different environment, could have built something powerful. But instead, they were spent on survival and retaliation. Men today fall into the same trap in different ways. They grind hard, but with no plan. They stay angry, but don't channel it. They stay ready to fight, but never ready to build. And life doesn't reward men who are always on defense. Life rewards men who are focused. One of the craziest parts of this story is how many men came from the same places and ended up with completely different outcomes. Big Nose Troy is gone. E-Moneybags is gone. Supreme is serving life. And then there's 50 Cent. Same Queens, same violence, same pressure. But one man learned how to redirect his energy. 50 didn't escape the streets because he was softer. He escaped because he was smarter. He turned pain into art, threats into motivation, enemies into fuel. That's not luck. That's awareness. And awareness is what separates men who survive from men who evolve. Here's the real question. This story forces you to ask, where is your energy going? Is it going into proving yourself to people who don't care? Is it going into battles that don't move your life forward? Is it going into defending an image instead of building a future? Because the world doesn't care how tough you are. It cares what you produce. The man who wins is not the loudest. It's not the angriest. It's not the most feared. It's the man who stays disciplined long enough to outlast everyone else. One of the most dangerous habits a man can have is the need to respond to everything, every insult, every slight, every challenge. That habit killed Big Nose Troy just as much as any bullet. Not because he was wrong, but because he was always engaged. There is power in silence. There is power in patience. There is power in letting things slide when sliding serves your long-term goals. Real dominance isn't loud. It's quiet and controlled. Big Nose Troy's story teaches us that masculinity without strategy leads to destruction. It teaches us that pride can feel good today and ruin your life tomorrow. It teaches us that the streets don't care about loyalty, heart, or respect, only outcomes. And most importantly, it teaches us that every man chooses his ending, even if he doesn't realize it at the time. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be fearless, but you do have to be intentional, because life will either sharpen you or bury you. If you're watching this and you feel that fire inside you, that anger, that hunger, that edge, don't kill it. Control it. Aim it. Turn it into discipline, not destruction. Turn it into growth, not grudges. Turn it into a future that actually benefits you. Because the goal isn't to be remembered as a legend who died too soon. The goal is to live long enough to enjoy what you build. If this story made you think, if it made you reflect, or if you see parts of yourself in Big Nose Troy's journey, hit the like button so more men hear this message. Drop a comment and tell me what lesson you took from this story. Watch the video below for more true crime content videos. Which Underworld icons should I do the next video about? Drop that in the comments.